What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the Hater, and it's time for a video request, cuckolds. Hater on the road. So a guy named Complexthony, or maybe it's Complex Thony, I don't know. He made a request. Now, Complexthony, I will say this. You made the request twice, it appears. You definitely paid me $5 twice. So the Hater, being that he's a fair man, says that you get one more request on the house, right? Now, everyone can request videos, but obviously I'm going to prioritize Complexthony's because he paid your boy, you know what I'm saying? And we got to have some sort of vetting mechanism. But the Hater tries to get to all the requests, and we're going to do something cool about that really soon, where I'm going to take a lot of requests and see what I want to make. But anyways, the video that he wants, right, in my opinion, is very ripe for discussion because it addresses something that the Hater has kind of been wiggling around, right? Which is the importance of the people in wrestling. He requests that I make a video by saying the following. He says, quote, "Could you make a video where you covered WWE's abhorrent marketing plan?" Then he gives several examples of that. Then he says, "And explain how you would go about marketing to their new target audience, if at all," right? So I just kind of hinted at this. I think the correct way to do it is to target the people. But what do I mean by that? Stay tuned and you'll find out. So first of all, Complexthony makes a really good point, right? WWE's new marketing direction, right, seems to be this like what he and I as well consider to be horseshit marketing, right? Like the example that he gives is paying Vanessa Hudgens, who if you put her in a lineup of 10 broads, I would not be able to pick her out. You know what I mean? Vanessa Hudgens, Selena Gomez, that's where the Hater stopped giving a rat's ass about famous people at all because, like, you know, quite frankly, they're not cool anymore. But anyways, like, she was apparently wearing a shirt that said, "Hot girls watch pro wrestling," right? I know they continue to pan to her, right? Which is obviously ridiculous. But basically, like, you know, even if that's her doing it on her own free will, which is very unlikely, right? It doesn't matter, right? Why is she more important than the Hater or than anybody else that's there as a fan, right? Like, especially, pardon me, considering that she probably is a plant, right? She probably is getting paid, you know? Like, they show these D-list celebrities to give off the impression that, like, wrestling is cool, right? To give off the impression that, like, oh, well, Hardy, you know, who I'm told is a good musician apparently, but they're like, oh, Hardy watches wrestling, so don't you want to watch wrestling? First of all, I don't get my cues from Hardy, number one. Number two, I sure as shit don't get my cues from Vanessa Hudgens, right? And number three, perhaps most importantly, I think the most important element to be taken into account here is that especially these people are paid to be there or are otherwise incentivized to be there because, you know, like, they'll go to Hardy and then Pat McAfee will be like, "Hardy's new album comes out Tuesday," you know what I mean? Any kind of, like, incentive doesn't have to be, like, just money, right? Any kind of marketing incentive that's there for them is unfair, in my opinion, and as a result, you know, kind of diminishes their voice. Meanwhile, we have the voice of the people that never gets diminished, right? Because the people are always louder than the celebrities, right? Nobody told the sheep that they outnumber the wolves. It's as simple as that. You know, they showed Taylor Swift, they're like, "I give a flying fuck." You know what I mean? They showed Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl, they're like, "Oh, look, Tay-Tay is here, and she's with that fucking pig, Ice Spice, every year." Ice Spice, who right there with Maggie Gyllenhaal, Jake Gyllenhaal's sister, is like, has to be, you know, in contention for the award of least attractive person that they try to make you think is attractive in history of humanity. It's either her or Maggie Gyllenhaal. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, someone thinks that when I'm watching the football game, that I have some sort of desire to know what the hell Taylor Swift is reacting to. I don't, right? This is marketing towards the wrong audience, which is exactly what Complexthony is kind of hinting at here, right? They show Taylor Swift, people boo. It's not the same audience. You know, the Taylor Swift audience is like girls who are teenagers. The NFL audience is 56-year-old men who weigh 385 pounds, look like Bill Belichick, they've never played a sport in their lives. That's the audience largely of the NFL, you know what I mean? It's the everyman, right? And those people couldn't give a flying fuck about Taylor Swift. Now, with all that being said, how does this relate to wrestling? Well, clearly, wrestling is trying to, like, appear big time, right? UFC does this too, you know? I've brought up in the past the iconic, like, jacked, like, guy from the 90s, like, it's like a white guy with a necklace, and he's just jacked, and he's flexing his muscles, and he's just a UFC fan, right? That guy captures the UFC fan base perfectly, right? He's just this, like, alpha male type. You know what I mean? That's who the UFC should be marketing to, you know? Now, the UFC has to market to, like, the wives of people like that guy, right? So they're like, oh, here's, like, Mickey Rourke and some woman, you know, they're watching UFC live, right? I don't know why I used Mickey Rourke as an example. Like, what am I, from the fucking 70s? But anyways, you know what I mean, right? They'll be on the UFC show, and they'll be like, oh, here's like this guy or that guy. Here's like Kid Rock, or, you know, someone that's quasi-famous still. And they'll be like, oh, these people watch UFC. Like, don't you want to be like them? No! That's precisely, that's the thing, that's the last thing I want, right? Like, the precise reason why I watch UFC is because I reject, theoretically, the people that you want me to associate with, right? Wrestling is even more like that, right? The entire point of, like, the Attitude Era is like, look, isn't everything fucking lame? Well, wrestling isn't, right? You gotta remember, you know, for all the good things to say about the 90s, which I love dearly, there's a lot of horseshit in the 90s too, right? You turn on the TV and you see, like, give me just one night, una noche, you know, 98 Degrees. That's actually a pretty good song, but you know what I'm saying, right? You see all these, like, pussy-ass motherfuckers on TV, and then you wait until 9 p.m., and then you see The Rock and Stone Cold. So the way that I would market to the WWE universe, if you will, right, is go after the everyman demographic, right? Which is the biggest demographic ever. Regular people. Regular people want to see cool things. Nobody wants to see Vanessa Hudgens. I would even argue that nobody knows who in the blue hell Vanessa Hudgens is. You know, we want to see badasses, and badasses are going to make the product stand out, right? So if you focus on someone who's cool, right, like kind of like how they focus on The Rock during the Attitude Era, you know, that was really nice, right? Got a lot of views. Everybody loves The Rock. You know, you don't need, like, you didn't need, like, the Vanessa Hudgens equivalent of 1998 to come out there and sell seats, right? Focus on the fans, you know? Now, in this day and age, focusing on the fans is a bit problematic because the fans are largely neckbeards, you know? So you don't want to focus on them for obvious reasons, right? But so you got to rehabilitate the fan base first, right? You need the fan base to be like that UFC guy or the cool and hip college-aged male crowd that would go to Raw up until like 2008, maybe, right? Like, that's, I'll say this story again, Cucks. The Hater was getting on the subway, right? To go to like Monday Night Raw when he was like in high school or some shit, right? Everybody in high school pretended they were like too cool for wrestling. It's a bunch of dorks, you know? But then I go and I'm waiting for the subway, for the train essentially, right? And, you know, I'm like several stops away and I see a lot of people though are, you know, I'm relatively close, so a lot of people are gathering at the same stop, and you could tell they were going to the WWE show, right? Because some of them were wearing, like, you know, like Shawn Michaels t-shirts, DX t-shirts, right? You know, Sheamus, there was a few Sheamus t-shirts, and there was one guy who was just carrying a belt, right? But this guy was like maybe in his mid-20s, good-looking guy, muscular, you know what I mean? Like a normal dude. He wasn't some fat neckbeard who, like, never has seen a woman undress in front of him. You know what I mean? Never seen a naked woman unless you had to pay for it or unless it was hentai. You know, this guy was like a regular dude. And I was like, wow, like, wrestling fans are cool people. You know, like, if you look at them, you're like, oh, they're cool dudes. You know? And not only are they cool dudes, meaning like they're normal, they're cooler than average fans, right? Because you look at like NBA fans, you look at like NFL fans, and a lot of them are a bunch of losers. You know what I mean? They're just a bunch of dorks. 17 points per game. Like, shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, that's the whole argument of wrestling is like, I don't need to be real to be cooler than you, you know? That's the whole point. Like, The Rock is cooler than LeBron, no matter what you do. Oh, LeBron can beat him in every sport. Doesn't matter. The Rock will lay the smack down verbally on his candy ass, on his Rudy Poo candy ass. So now we have to first rehabilitate the audience. They're trying to do this a little bit by showing audience signs. The way I would do it is I would pick actual signs that are clever. Not like Michael Cole is my favorite so that Michael Cole can comment on it. No. Pick funny signs, right? Focus on the attractive people in your audience. The people that don't look like nerds, you know? And then spotlight them. Then look at this person. You know, once in a while they do that. They show like some like hot girl like cheering on for like Randy Orton or something. Or they'll show like a little girl crying when like The Miz wins, you know? They have these fan moments. Or like the black guy that was shocked at The Undertaker losing, you know? They have these moments. So do more of that, right? And then I think that's going to get the people at home to be like, wow, the people that watch wrestling are just like me. You know, look at Americana right in front of me, right? And if you do that, you know, then number one, you don't need to embarrass yourself by paying these D-list celebrities, right? It's not like they're even getting good celebrities. It's like, oh, here's like Princely Bryce, whatever the fuck his name is, some like little shit, some guy who like toured with like Luke Bryan, you know what I mean? Like, Luke Bryan himself isn't big time enough to like say, look, it's Luke Bryan, you know? Most people, you walk down the street, you're like, who the fuck is this guy? You show a picture of Luke Bryan, they're going to be like, I don't know. Oh, it's the guy from American Idol? Is that who it is? They don't even know his name probably, let alone the guy that opened for him. You know, this is humiliating. At this point, it would be much more conducive to show like, not that like Hardy, who's like this weird guy with a mullet, and Pat McAfee has to explain to who he is. Instead of showing Hardy, show like a random ass person who looks good and is confident, and then people at home are like, wow, you know, that's how that goes. Now, marketing is a beast, right? And it's not just this kind of marketing that we need to talk about. There's other forms of marketing. Number one, get rid of a lot of the commercials that would be considered by the standards of the 90s and 2000s and even now as whack. I was going to use a different word, but we're not allowed to say that word anymore, cucks. So, you know, anything that's lame, get rid of it. So, for example, like, don't get your coolest guy, LA Knight, to say, snap into a Slim Jim. No, that's a job for Jey Uso. That's a Jey Uso job. You understand? That's a Grayson Waller job. That's not a Braun Breaker or like a, you know, LA Knight job. That's a Ludwig Kaiser job. You know, this, like, prioritize that, right? Stop selling goofy shit, you know? And then obviously, the number one thing to market to the world is consistency. You know, the hater watches several TV shows, and I've gotten into quite a few TV shows these last few years. There's a show called Found. It's pretty good. It's a little bit lame in times, but The Rookie, the hater loves The Rookie, you know what I mean? And there's another one, High Potential. That's a good show. But the point is, some of these shows are on every week, and some of them aren't, right? Like the new Matlock with Kathy Bates, which is a fantastic show, by the way, right? Like, they'll be like, here's an episode this week, and then you have to wait like 3-4 weeks for the next episode. And I'm like, oh, that's not consistent enough, you know? Why am I going to do those 3-4 weeks at this time, right? At this time that I've dedicated to this show. I have to watch something else. Consistency is key. Now, WWE, for all the negatives, and AEW too, for all the negatives that we can say about them, they are consistent in terms of providing that entertainment, right? I think personally, one of the reasons why wrestling was so popular in the 90s and still is a thing today is because it's every week, right? It's like a soap opera. You know, you can always find wrestling any given week. That's not the case for many other forms of entertainment, you know what I mean? Like, now we have to wait, like, what, like 5 months? Not even, it's like 6-7 months, right? Until, like, the season starts again, the NFL season. It's honestly inexcusable that these guys, like, their season is like 15 games, they get paid all that money, you know what I mean? Like, for basically, like, and also, let's be real, like, you know, I enjoy football, but it's like, every couple of games, you see some guy running, and he just, like, crosses himself out, and then, like, the game has to stop, you get, like, 3 commercial breaks because this guy pulled his, like, ass muscle, right, while running, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, they're elite athletes, oh, look, he went left a little too fast, he's out for the whole season, you know what I mean? Like, you don't see that shit happening in soccer, you know what I mean? Like, very rarely, but, like, you don't see somebody, like, running and they just collapse to the ground. Oh, the guy ran too hard. You know? But anyway, it's not here or there. The point is, for something like football, you have to wait like 6-7 months. For basketball, you have to wait several months. For the World Cup, if we're counting that as a thing, you have to wait like what? Like 4 years, basically, right? You got a lot of waiting, you know, to do, and wrestling is there. But that's not the only form of consistency that matters, right? It's time for the WWE to start focusing their marketing on stars that are there consistently, right? Now, I don't want to make this a Jey Uso video because it's not about that. But the fact of the matter is the fact of the matter, right? Jey Uso is a workhorse, right? Now, this year has been a little bit weird because other workhorse type people, like AJ Styles, for example, have been injured, right? The New Day turned heel, so it's a little bit, they're also kind of like workhorses, right? But the reality is that the only workhorse in this company is AJ Styles and maybe Jey Uso and LA Knight. That's it. Everybody else wrestles sporadically. You know what I mean? Like, when was the last time you saw Santos Escobar wrestle a match, right? I'll throw in Andrade there as well. Andrade has wrestled consistently this year, you know? And, of course, Carmelo Hayes. But beyond these 4 or 5, maybe 6, 7 people, nobody wrestles consistently. So it's like, if I tune in, and I happen to be lucky enough to catch, like, a match even, let's say I tune in on January 6th, cucks, and I see a match with Roman Reigns, I'm like, oh, shit. I like this guy, let's say, right? Let's say it's my first time watching. I'm like, I like this guy. You know what? Even the blonde guy who's a little bit fat that he beat, I like him too, you know? And then you're like, oh, great. I'm going to watch next week and see what these guys do. Guess what, motherfucks? You're not going to see them next week. You're not going to see them for the fucking next month. You understand me? Roman Reigns hasn't been heard from since January 6th. Roman Reigns is one of the worst stars, quote unquote, of all time at this point. You know, it's one thing to do it while you're the champion because it's like, all right, he's still the champion. His presence is felt by the fact that he's the champion. But now he's a nobody. So the fact that Roman Reigns isn't there every week suggests that he has no interest whatsoever, you know what I mean, in doing anything important, right? He came and lost to fucking, what's it called? To Sol Sikoa one time, then he beat Sol Sikoa, then he beat him again in the Tribal Combat on January 6th, and then he waited until the Rumble, like everyone else did, like CM Punk, Drew McIntyre. None of these fucking assholes did anything during that month, right? They just come back to the Rumble, all of them lose, Jey Uso thankfully wins. You know what? Honestly, I'm very happy that Jey Uso won. You know, people keep saying he doesn't deserve it. Who the fuck deserves it? You know what I mean? Roman Reigns deserves it for having 5 matches in 5 years? Fuck out of here, you know what I mean? So like, you know, Jey Uso wins the Rumble, and then you have no consistency because you're tuning in, let's say, to see Roman Reigns or Sol Sikoa. You have to wait a fucking month to see them again. And it's going to be on pay-per-view. You know? So it's like, why the fuck are you putting Roman Reigns versus Sol Sikoa on Monday night if I can't expect to see them again? You know, next week, based on this week's Raw, let's say, next week, I would expect Logan Paul to have a presence, to be there, to cut a promo, to probably have a match. Same thing with Rey Mysterio. Same thing with Finn Balor and Seth Rollins, which they are going to have a match, right? Like, there's people, motherfucks, that just don't show up. You know, it's unbelievable. Like, for example, Drew McIntyre, who's had, like, the worst year ever, maybe, right? Him and Bianca Belair are tied for, like, most meaningless year in one's career. You know what I mean? Like, he's lost every match. I honestly don't think Drew McIntyre has won any match except for matches against Sami Zayn, which obviously don't count, right? Speaking of Sami Zayn, he too was absent, right? Drew McIntyre has lost everything, you know? He should want to be there every week to say, I deserve a spot at WrestleMania. He didn't even show up last week. Sami Zayn didn't even show up last week. They weren't there at all, motherfucks. So in order to market correctly, you need to have people that are likable, right? People like Drew McIntyre, people like Sami Zayn, right? For better or for worse. So it's like you have to have these people there every week so that I have something to tune into. Now, I'm going to tune into Raw next week. I know I'm going to see Finn Balor and Seth Rollins. Both suck ass. I have no interest in watching that match whatsoever. But then beyond that, there's like a women's match they announced, I think. But beyond that, I have no idea what the fuck I'm going to see. And that's unacceptable. I should have an idea. I'm not saying, like, tell me the card for next week. But just understand that there are things that I expect based on what I saw last week. You know, if like, for example, let's say I want to see Logan Paul again. If I have no idea the next time Logan Paul is going to show up, I'm not going to tune in. You know? I'm just not going to. I'm not going to spend 5 consecutive Mondays hoping to see Roman Reigns. Fuck that. I'm just not going to watch. Kiss my ass. And that's why the viewership has gone down. Because nobody wants to work. And if nobody wants to work, nobody's going to make that money. And WWE, although they are making the money from sponsorships, it's very clear that the WWE, because of these abhorrent marketing decisions, they're going in the wrong direction, motherfuckers. Like, I'm going to look at the raw viewership. I bet you it's down again. You know what I mean? Although, like, this week was a pretty good episode, so we'll see. But I bet you it's down anyways, cucks. That being said, take care of yourselves and fuck your mothers.